female serial killers are relatively rare compared to their male counterparts, but some have committed heinous crimes throughout history. Here are 10 of the most dangerous female serial killers. First, Elizabeth Bathory. Elizabeth Bathory, a Hungarian countess, was born into a powerful and wealthy family. Her reign of terror began around 1602, when rumors of her cruelty towards servant girls and local peasants surfaced. She was accused of torturing and killing hundreds of young girls, mostly between the ages of 10 and 14. The exact number of her victims is unclear due to the lack of concrete evidence from the trial. Bathory's alleged crimes included severe beatings, burning, cutting, and mutilation of her victims. Some accounts suggest she even engaged in acts of vampirism, draining the blood of her victims and bathing in it to maintain her youthful appearance. Her social status initially shielded her from prosecution, but as rumors grew, authorities could no longer ignore the mounting evidence. In 1610, Elizabeth Bathory was arrested, along with some of her accomplices, and put on trial. She was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment, but her high-ranking status prevented her from being executed. She was confined to a small windowless room in her castle until her death in 1614. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos was an American prostitute who had a troubled upbringing, marked by abuse, neglect, and early involvement in criminal activities. Between 1989 and 1990, she killed 7 men, mostly middle-aged truck drivers who had picked her up while she was hitchhiking. Wuornos claimed that she acted in self-defense, stating that these men had attempted to rape or sexually assault her. However, her motive was also linked to robbery, as she often stole the victims' belongings after killing them. Her chaotic and abusive lifestyle, combined with a history of mental health issues, likely contributed to her violent actions. In 1992, Aileen Wuornos was arrested, and her trial gained significant media attention. She was convicted of murder and sentenced to death in Florida. Despite claims of self-defense and pleas for clemency, she was executed by lethal injection in 2002. Mary Ann Cotton. Mary Ann Cotton was an English woman who became notorious for her use of arsenic poisoning to kill her husbands, lovers, and children. Her motive was to collect life insurance payouts and financial gains. Her first known victim was her mother, and she went on to kill 3 of her husbands and many others, including her children. Cotton was married multiple times and had a history of suspicious deaths and insurance claims following her marriages. Eventually, her actions caught the attention of the authorities, and in 1873 she was arrested and charged with murder. After a highly published trial, Mary Ann Cotton was found guilty of the murder of her stepson and was sentenced to death by hanging. She was executed in March 1873 at Durham County Gaol. Beverly Allitt. Beverly Allitt was a British nurse who worked in a children's ward at Grantham Hospital in England. Between 1991 and 1993, she committed a series of murders and attempted murders of young children under her care. Allitt's method of killing involved administering lethal injections of insulin or other dangerous substances to her victims. She also smothered some of the children to death. Her actions led to deaths of 4 children and injuries to 9 others. After a police investigation, Allitt was arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder, attempted murder, and grievous bodily harm. In 1993, she was found guilty on 13 accounts and was sentenced to life imprisonment, with a minimum term of 30 years. Bella Gunness. Bella Gunness, a Norwegian-American woman, is believed to have killed multiple suitors, children, and hired hands for financial gain. She lured her victims to her farm through personal ads, seeking love and companionship. Upon arrival, the victims were never seen again. Some evidence suggests she dismembered and buried them on her property, while others believe she may have staged some deaths as accidents to claim insurance money. In April 1908, a fire broke out on Belle Gunes farm, and authorities found multiple bodies among the ruins. Belle's body was also discovered, but some speculate that she might have staged her death and escaped. The exact number of her victims remains unknown. Daria Saltykova. Daria Saltykova, known as the Saltykira, was a Russian noblewoman who brutally murdered over 100 of her serfs during the mid-18th century. She inherited significant estates and was known for her ruthless and sadistic treatment of her serfs. Saltykova used her position and power to abuse and torture her subjects, committing acts of violence that included severe beatings, mutilation, and even murder. Her actions were often driven by sadistic pressure. Despite complaints from the serfs and investigations, Saltykova managed to evade justice for many years. However, in 1762, after Catherine the Great came to power, an investigation was launched, and Saltykova was arrested. In 1768, she was sentenced to life imprisonment and spent the rest of her life in solitary confinement. Joanna Barazza. Joanna Barazza, also known as La Metaviejitas, which that translates into the Old Lady Killer, was a Mexican wrestler turned serial killer. She targeted elderly women, most of them living alone in Mexico City, and gained entry to their homes by pretending to be a government official or a charity worker. Once inside, she strangled her victims with pieces of clothing or cords and robbed them. Between 1999 and 2006, Barazza is confirmed to have killed at least 11 elderly women. Her motive was believed to be rooted in anger towards her own mother and a desire for financial gain. In 2006, Barazza was arrested after being caught fleeing the scene of one of her murders. She was convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to 759 years in prison. Leonarda Chialunci. Leonarda Chianchiulli, an Italian woman, was also known as the soap maker of Correggio. Between 1939 and 1940, she killed 3 women, including 2 of her neighbors, and turned their bodies into soap and cakes. Chianchiulli believed that her actions were a way to protect her son from the dangers of World War II by offering human sacrifices to spare him. She also hoped that by creating soap from the fat of her victims, it would cleanse her home and bring her good fortune. Chianchiulli's crimes were eventually discovered and she was arrested in 1940. In 1946, she was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 30 years in prison and 3 years in a mental asylum, where she died of cerebral apoplexy in 1970. Nanny Doss. Nanny Doss, known as the Giggling Granny, was an American serial killer who murdered 11 people, including 4 of her husbands, during the 1920s to the 1950s. She earned her nickname due to her cheerful demeanor and tendency to laugh off any suspicion or questioning. Doss used arsenic to poison her victims, which included family members and lovers. Her motives were often financial gain or to escape unhappy relationships. She was married multiple times and had a history of tumultuous relationships with her husbands. In 1954, after the death of her 5th husband, Nanny Doss' dark secrets began to unravel. She confessed to her crimes and was subsequently arrested and charged with murder. In 1955, she pleaded guilty and received a life sentence in prison. She died of leukemia in 1965 while incarcerated. Myra Hindley and Rosemary West. Myra Hindley and Rosemary West are British serial killers who were involved in multiple murders during separate periods. Myra Hindley, along with her partner Ian Brady, was responsible for the Moors murders in the 1960s. They kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and murdered 5 children and teenagers, burying their bodies on Saddleworth Moor near Manchester, England. Hindley actively participated in the killings and also took photographs of the victims during their abuse. Rosemary West, along with her husband Fred West, was involved in a series of murders, sexual assaults, and dismemberments during the 1970s and 1980s. Their victims included young women, including some of their own family members, whom they sexually assaulted and killed at their home in Gloucester, England. Both Mira Hindley and Rosemary West were arrested and brought to trial. Hindley was sentenced to life imprisonment in 1966, and she maintained her innocence for many years before finally admitting to her involvement in the crimes. She died in prison in 2002. Rosemary West was arrested in 1994 and found guilty of 10 counts of murder. She received a life sentence and remains incarcerated. These women represent some of the most notorious female killers in history. Thanks for watching. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video.